The prospect of being captured by enemy forces and thrown into jail alongside their deserters was usually terrifying. Yet Ethan smiled as the cell door closed behind him and he looked over each of his cellmates. The holding cell stretched before him like a cavern carved from dark rock, its walls thick and imposing. The air was thick and filled with the acrid scent of fear, sweat, and despair. A combination that would have made most humans gag. But Ethan breathed it in deeply, his smile never wavering as he took his first steps into what his captors undoubtedly intended as his tomb. He stood tall despite the energy shackles weighing down his wrists, his military-issued gray jumpsuit torn and stained with the purple blood of his enemies. At 6 feet 2 inches, he towered over most of the cell's occupants, his broad shoulders and muscled frame speaking of years of combat training. His boots, caked with the alien mud of this colony world, pressed hard against the metal floor with each step. As he advanced, the Yanura deserters scattered before him like startled birds. Each of them bore the distinctive features of their race. Scales like chips of charcoal covering every visible inch of their bodies, creating patterns that absorbed most of the purple light. Their eyes, twin orbs of green, tracked his movement with a mixture of confusion and wariness. Most striking were their lips, pure white against the darkness of their scales, creating an almost spectral appearance when they spoke or grimaced. They wore no clothing, their species seeing no need for modesty, their scaled bodies providing all the protection they required from the elements. Ethan's gaze swept across the cell, taking in the makeshift sleeping areas and the single bench carved from the same dark materials as the walls. Without hesitation, he strode toward it, his smile widening as the Yanur who had been occupying it scrambled away. He settled himself on the bench, leaning back against the wall and crossing his ankles. The deserters watched him with expressions of pure bewilderment, their green eyes blinking rapidly, a sign of surprise among their kind. One of the largest Yanur in the cell suddenly turned to stare at the others, anger flashing in his violet eyes like lightning in a storm cloud. When he found reassurance in their gazes, the large Yanur approached Ethan with firm steps, though those with keen eyes could detect the slight hesitation in his gait. The way his clawed feet didn't quite strike the floor with the confidence his size suggested. He stopped just outside of arm's reach, his green eyes narrowing as he studied the smiling human.
"I am Grilar," he announced. "Why do you smile, human? Why are you not afraid after being thrown into prison with us?"
Ethan tilted his head, considering the Yanur before him with the same mild interest one might show towards an average street performer.
"Name's Ethan,"
he replied, deliberately ignoring the question. His eyes traveled up and down Grilar's form with frank curiosity.
"You male or female? Despite your lack of clothes, I can't tell the difference in your species."
Grilar's scales rattled, the sound like coins shaking in a metal tin. His eyes flared brighter, and his white lips pulled back to reveal rows of needle-sharp teeth.
"Of course I am male!"
He spat, his voice raising in pitch.
"Everyone in this cell is male. No one in the galaxy would imprison males and females together for a number of reasons. Even your backward species must understand the complications that would arise."
Ethan's laugh echoed through the cell, a sound so unexpected and genuine that several of the Yanur flinched.
"Oh, how could I have guessed that?"
he asked.
"Your species just threw me in jail together with their own deserters without concern. It doesn't seem like they're too worried about following galactic standards of imprisonment."
Grilar's clawed hands clenched into fists, his entire body trembling with obvious rage.
"Answer my question, human,"
he growled. leaning closer despite his obvious reluctance to decrease the distance between them.
Why are you not afraid?
Ethan's smile transformed into something sharper, more predatory.
You'll see,
he said simply, then leaned forward as if sharing a secret.
Humanity's victory is certain. By tomorrow, we'll be out of this place.
He chuckled again, the sound low and confident.
Besides, why would I be afraid of deserters? You all ran from battle, didn't you? If anything,
his eyes swept across the cell, taking in each cowering figure.
You're locked in here with me, not the other way around.
The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Yanur deserters pressed themselves against the walls, increasing the distance between themselves and the human as if he carried some contagious disease. Grilar, however, stood his ground.
That's a lot of courage for someone who was captured,
he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm.
Tell me, great human warrior, how exactly did the mighty soldier end up in chains? Did you perhaps trip over your own ego?
Ethan's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened.
I know we'll win, because we always do, he said. We face species with better technology, larger numbers, and longer military traditions, and we've always found a way.
He paused, his fingers absently tracing the energy shackles on his wrist.
And as for how I got captured, I saved a kid.
The murmur that ran through the Yanur deserters was skeptical at best. Ethan continued, his voice taking on a distant quality as he recalled the events.
The battle was almost over. We'd broken through their main defensive line, and the forces were in full retreat. Victory was minutes away.
He shook his head, a rueful smile playing at his lips.
And then I saw this small figure stumbling through the smoke and the debris. Couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old. Terrified and alone and in the middle of a war zone. Liar!
One of the deserters hissed from the safety of the far wall.
You humans have no honor. You probably surrendered to save your own skin. He's making it up.
Another agreed, finding courage in the distance between himself and the human.
Probably deserted like us. Why else would they put him here?
Grilar moved even closer, close enough that Ethan could see the individual scales on his face.
There are no human children on this colony world,
he stated with absolute certainty.
I know this for a fact. Humanity only brought scientists and fighters here. No families, no civilians, and certainly no children. Your lie is as transparent as your species' false bravado.
Ethan's smile returned, but this time it held something different. A mixture of sadness and irony that seemed to age him in an instant.
You're right,
he said quietly, causing Grilar to blink in surprise.
There are no human children on this colony.
He paused, letting the words sink in before delivering the final revelation that would shatter their assumptions.
The child that I saved was not a human. It was a little Yanur, wandering the battlefield, probably looking for its parents among the dead.
The silence that followed was absolute. Every green eye in the cell fixed on Ethan, unblinking and disbelieving. Grilar's mouth opened and closed several times, his white lips forming words that refused to emerge.
I didn't hesitate,
Ethan continued, his voice filling the vacuum of their shock.
Didn't think about the sides or species or the fact that we were winning. I saw a scared kid in danger and acted. Carried the child to safety, to where your medical teams were setting up. And that's when your soldiers surrounded me.
He shrugged. the gesture somehow encompassing both pride and resignation.
I was so shocked they forgot to shoot, and by the time they remembered I was the enemy, I'd already handed over the kid and put my hands up.
The Yanur deserters remained frozen, as if Ethan's words had transformed them into statues. Their purple eyes darted between each other, seeking confirmation that they had all heard the same impossible thing. A human soldier, in the midst of victory, had sacrificed his freedom to save one of their young. Eventually, Grilar took several slow steps backward. When he finally found his voice, it was weak, lacking anger.
"You can keep the seat,"
he said, then turned and walked to the far side of the cell, leaving Ethan alone in a circle of empty space. As the hours passed, Ethan claimed not just the bench, but the best sleeping spot as well. A corner where the air circulation created a slight breeze, offering relief from the cell's oppressive atmosphere. The Yanur deserters gave him a wide berth, but their looks had changed. Not quite respect, perhaps, but a recognition that this human was not their enemy. Ethan settled in for the night, using his torn jumpsuit sleeve as a makeshift pillow. Around him, the Yanur deserters whispered among themselves in their own language, the sound like wind through dried leaves. He smiled once more before closing his eyes, secure in the knowledge of what tomorrow would bring. And he was right. When the cell door opened the next morning, it wasn't to deliver the thin gruel that served as prisoner food. Instead, human soldiers in full combat gear stood in the doorway, their weapons lowered but ready. The war was over, just as Ethan had predicted. As Ethan walked out of the cell, he paused at the threshold and looked back at the Yanur deserters. Grilar met his gaze, and for a moment, understanding passed between them, soldier to soldier, despite everything that divided them. Then, Ethan stepped into the light of freedom, leaving behind a cell full of aliens who would spend the rest of their lives trying to understand what they had witnessed. An enemy who had shown them what honor looked like, even in the midst of war.